Well, to debate this, let's go to our panel in Nairobi. Joining me now is Kimani Ichung'wah. He's a member of parliament from the ruling Jubilee party. And we're also joined by Edwin Sifuna. He's the Secretary General of the opposition Orange Democratic Movement. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us here on the Newsmakers. So, more than 50 top officials detained, 54 suspects, about $100 million stolen at government agencies. As an MP, is this embarrassing?
I think it's rather embarrassing, and there's no excuse for such an enormous amount of money to have been lost of public funds. But again, the question is on the amount. The amount, I think, is only fair to say that the amount is yet to be ascertained. We are yet to see from the court charges the total aggregate of money is lost. But the point is that there is money lost, irrespective of the amount. It is inexcusable.
So, Edwin, when you heard the news and you saw that all these arrests were made, did you feel that, okay, finally, credit where it's due, this government is taking corruption seriously?
Not really, because what hit us was a sense of deja vu. As you're aware, we have been here before. In the first term of President Kenyatta, we had a similar incident at the National Youth Service, the same organization that is under the spotlight again. And just about a similar number of people were arrested and taken for prosecutions. But you will note that just about each and every one of those who were arrested and taken to courts were actually acquitted in the first NYS saga. So we are hearing a lot of positive vibes or noises from the new Director of Public Prosecutions, but we have to look at it with cautious optimism in light of what happened with the last batch of NYS suspects that were taken to court.
Okay, so looking at the track record, Kimani, we've seen this movie before. These guys will get let off.
I think I have to disagree with my friend Sifuna on one point, that there is anything deja vu about this latest move. One, we must appreciate that this move was not, unlike the first case where it was other people from outside calling on government to come in and investigate. It is government that initiated this investigation through the DCI. We have a new DCI. As Sifuna appreciates, we have a new Director of Public Prosecutions, and they have, within a record period of less than probably 2 months, been able to carry out investigations. And this time round, not just taken a handful of people. They have taken people from the lower cadres of staff to the highest level of a principal secretary and the former Director General of NYS, of the National Youth Service. Therefore, the marked difference between the first investigation and this one is that the first one was actually instigated by demands by probably even members of opposition and civil society. This time round, it was initiated within government itself. DCI has been able, unlike in the past where people had to be pushed to conclude investigation and charge people in court amid a lot of political pushing and shoveling. This time round, even without any political interference and pushing, the DCI has been, within a record period, been able to take people to court. And a record number of people, 50 people. Last time, I think we saw a handful less than 10 people being taken to court. We've seen many of them being discharged by the courts on the argument that there was no evidence before the courts. My prayer today, and the prayer of every other Kenyan, is that there will be adequate evidence to be able to actually take action against these people who are in court today. But I am very confident the new DPP, the new DCI have been able to do this within a very short time. And is a positive thing for the country, is a step in the right direction. The last time, again, we, in our characteristic Kenyan way, we cry for blood of big shots. We cried for the blood of the cabinet secretary, the principal secretary, and all the big shots. We forgot the very little people, the lower cadres of staff, who actually are the people who move transactions in the system, the people who move vouchers around. This time, we have seen not just this lower cadre of people who are actually the initiators of these transactions, the one who actually process this transaction through the system.
Right.
We have even seen business people, private business people who are involved in this scandal,
these are all
being
interesting
arrested
points.
and taken to court.
Something
that never happened in the past.
Let's separate out some of it. Let me address the first issue there, Edwin. This new Director of Criminal Investigations, George Kinoti, and there's also the Director of Public Prosecutions. If you look at what they have done, they've been courageous, and as Kimani says, it has come from the inside. This is self-generated from within government. Doesn't that show you a system with some solid checks and balances?
For me, and I will take this point as a lawyer, the measure of whether a criminal justice system is working, whether the DCI who is responsible for the investigations and to present the proper and full evidence to the DPP, and whether the DPP has the capacity to prosecute these people. The success of those two institutions can only be measured by the number of convictions that we see out of the cases that they present to the courts. What the habit has been in this country is that people are hauled to court just to satiate the public anger and to create this impression that something is being done. There's a lot of people who appear to be busy, but no actual work is being done. We have taken the, as I said, position that we will be cautiously optimistic, that we will not judge the success or otherwise of the fight against corruption as exhibited by these two new officers. At this particular stage, when, all corruption trials in this country end at arraignment, that is where even the media interest actually wins. We want the media to actually follow up these prosecutions, and during the presentation of the evidence, we've had the DPP claim that he has very solid evidence this time round. We want the media to be there for us to cast a light on the kind of work that the Directorate of Criminal Investigations and the DPP have done. For me, and the reason that I said it was deja vu, Mr. Kimani Ichung'wah, the MP, knows that even the last time, the PS who was responsible for devolution at that particular time, PS Mangiti, was one of those charged and he was let off. So there was another incident where the president showed up in the House during the last parliament with a list of 60 people and claimed that this was now he's taking the fight to the corrupt. But out of that list, we would ask Kimani today, how many people that were on the president's list that he submitted in the House? What percentage of people on that list were convicted?
Right.
So for us, we are hoping, because as I said, we are hearing all the positive noises, the right noises from the new DPP, but the measure of success is not the number of people that you hold to court, but the number of convictions that you're able to secure.
So, Kimani, to the point that people are being hauled to court to satiate public anger, we've seen an explosion of media coverage in Kenya. That's one of the reasons it was also flagged up on our radar, because of the way the Kenyan media had covered this story. To that point, is it plausible that President Kenyatta knew just how corrupt these people were at the very top, but didn't do anything until there was public outrage and this explosion of media coverage, and he felt he needed to do something, and also the Director of Public Prosecutions and others felt they needed to do something in response to the anger?
I think, to be honest, President Kenyatta was not acting out of the public's anger. President Kenyatta did direct the DCI to move into NYS and carry out investigations and ensure people are charged. And I think from what we have heard is that this came from an intelligence report which we are not privy to. Those intelligence reports are briefs that are taken to the president, only the president, and the president acted out of those intelligence reports. He did not do that with the media in the know. The media only got to know about these investigations when investigations were midstream. And therefore, the question that the media has been an active participant in letting the world and the public know what is going on, but they're only letting the public know what government was actually doing. And therefore, it has nothing to do with assuaging public anger. It has everything to do with the president's commitment, as he said that this time it will be business as unusual. And business being unusual, the president did move as he named his new government after the elections, the October elections last year. He did move to appoint a new director of the Criminal Investigations Department. He appointed a new DPP, or rather he accepted the resignation of the former DPP and initiated the process to appoint a new DPP. And we are seeing the fruits of all those efforts. Therefore, in terms of political will, I can tell you without flinching my eyes that the president is more than determined, and indeed the entire government is more than determined to fight the corruption and ensure that those who misappropriate public resources are taken to court. And the next bit, of course, and I completely agree with my friend Sifuna, that those who were taken to court last time, I do not know, I'm not a lawyer like Sifuna, whether it was principally due to lack of evidence or issues that happened that we cannot know within the judicial system. And therefore, I can only pray and hope that the judicial system, and again, I've also seen something very positive this time from the judiciary, before people would move to court and get injunctive orders not to be charged on corruption charges.
Right.
This time, 2 of those business people moved to court, and the judiciary stood firm and allowed the prosecution to bring their case to court. And therefore, I can only pray and hope that we can have that renewed energy and vigor to fight corruption, even from the bench in the judiciary.
Edwin, do you share those prayers and that hope that there will be successful prosecutions and fair trials?
Again, I have said and I will repeat that we will have to wait and see the quality of the evidence that is presented before the courts, because as a lawyer, again, I will tell you that a judge will never improve the quality of your case. If you put trash in, you will get trash out. Last time, and I want to confirm to Mr. Ichung'wah, that the reason that the courts gave for the acquittals that we saw in the first NYS saga was insufficiency of evidence, and that in fact the witnesses that were called by the prosecution were there to actually aid the case of the defense, that they were coming to confirm that everything was done by the book. The reason that we are suspicious or remain cautiously optimistic, as I said, is because we've been here before. And this president, this same president, Mr. Ichung'wah, has conveniently avoided talking about the names that were presented before Parliament by President Uhuru Kenyatta in his last term to, essentially indicate this newfound drive against corruption. And how many times can you begin a journey against corruption? So that is why some of us are skeptical.
Okay, so let's take that question and pose it. Okay, let's take that question and pose it to Kimani. How many times can you begin a new, fresh drive against corruption?
I think, to be honest, and Sifuna, being honest, he will tell the world that what the president did in the last parliament, he tabled names of people who were under investigations by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, and said he was directing that all those people do step aside from public office pending the conclusion of investigations. For those whose investigations were concluded and their files were forwarded to the Director of Public Prosecutions, then the former DPP, they were able to be taken to court. There are those who have been acquitted by the courts on the basis of insufficient evidence. There are those whose cases are still ongoing. I can cite the case example of Mr. Michael Kamau, the former Cabinet Secretary for Transport, who even the current DPP has reintroduced the charges that were dropped in court. And therefore, the fact that there are things that have happened in the past and people charged and being discharged in the courts, that does not in any way foreclose any further investigations and recharging them in court. And that is a case example. Otherwise, I can only state and restate that the president has said it is business as unusual. Right. We have seen from evidence in this case. I will agree with Sifuna. We have to wait and see what happens in the courts, because between me and Sifuna and everybody else in the world, we do not know what evidence the DCI got, what evidence DPP has. We will wait for the prosecution to prove their cases in court, and hopefully that if there are people who are guilty, the only thing I have to be cautious about also is a habit to always have a lynch mob psychology, right, where we rush to lynch people in the court of public opinion. Let us wait for the prosecutions to go on, and those who are guilty, I do hope the judiciary will also act accordingly.
Kimani, let me ask you a personal question. Transparency International in 2017. Yes, they listed Kenya 143rd out of 180 countries. They spoke of deep corruption within the political system and the economic system. When we're looking at the suspects now, 54, not only do you have government officials, but you have big businessmen. You're somebody who's been in the system for a long time. You're an MP, you're a member of the ruling party. Tell us, honestly, how tempting or how easy is it to be corrupt as a politician in Kenya? Has anybody dangled anything in front of you?
Let me say, it is very easy to be corrupt in this country, and anywhere in the world, it is very easy to be corrupt. It depends on your integrity and your professional ethics and how you value yourself as an individual. If you don't value yourself as an individual, if you have no professional ethics, no integrity, it is very easy to be corrupt, because people are always dangling things in front of you. You have got to resist all these things. You have got, at the end of the day, to remember that you're in public service to serve the public and not to for self-aggrandizement. And if you're there for self-aggrandizement, then that is where you find a lot of people being tempted to get into corrupt activities. But if you stick to ethical and issues of integrity, then it is not easy. I will tell you, as a member of parliament, I served in very influential committees of the National Assembly. People do lobby. Even now in my current position, I have seen people dangling things before my eyes. But I have got to stand firm and act in the best interest of the country.
Edwin, I'm going to give you the final word in this discussion. It's been fascinating, but we're running out of time. Go ahead, Edwin.
Thank you very much. I mean, there is a very direct nexus between political power in this country and corruption. Those two vices, it's like political power exists to support the corrupt system in this country, and corruption is what sustains the political system in this country. When you hear a senior leader in government telling you that his budget for the 2022 election is 200 billion Kenya shillings, essentially $2 billion US, to be spent on a campaign. Yet we know how much this public official earns. We know all his businesses and how much money he makes. That tells you that as a country, we are a long, long way from solving this issue of corruption, especially because it underwrites political success in this country. So if we are going to be honest that we are going to fight this vice, President Kenyatta must begin with the people in the office of the president itself. That is where corruption in this country is actually hosted.
Okay, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure talking to both of you. Kimani Ichung'wah and Edwin Sifuna.
Thank you.
All mine, thank you.
Okay, hope to have you on the Newsmakers again.